Starting us off at number 5, Mask Karen. There have been a lot of Karens who've been upset about the whole wear a mask thing. One of these infamous Karens had been arrested in Melbourne for not complying with the law stating that everyone must wear a mask and those who fail to do so will be hit with $200 fines. This Karen had been seen on 2 separate occasions fighting with employees of various department stores over her not wearing a mask. I'm gonna take a moment to say, wear a mask. Please. It's people like this who are the reason that Halloween is cancelled this year. Please just put a piece of cloth over your face. Anyway, this woman was approached by officers after a hostile situation started to get out of hand, and the woman kept saying that it was unlawful for them to ask her to wear a mask. No, it's not. This Karen really wouldn't take no for an answer, but they rarely do, so that's really not surprising. This Karen kept getting hostile with the officers and was even handcuffed. She was not happy with that and even claimed that her arrest was also unlawful and that the legislation was fraudulent, it didn't apply to her, and that it only applies to dead people. I'm not quite sure where that came from, Karen, but that's certainly not correct. The Karen was later released but came back to the station days later in order to request that her name be removed from the record or she would press legal action against the police department. She is by far one of the most Karens out there. In at number 4, Staircase Karen. You may be familiar with the viral video of a racist Karen confronting a woman who was working out in a park. The 2 women bumped into each other on the staircase and chaos ensued. The Karen then hurled a slew of racist remarks at the woman, saying things like, get out of this country, get out of this state, get out of this world, and using some not so nice language. All of this because you bumped into each other on a freaking staircase? And apparently there was more than enough room on the stairs for her to not even come close to the other woman. Obviously this Karen has some deep-rooted issues. This woman acted like she was so entitled, like the stairs were the gateway to heaven or something. Like, lady, this is a park, a public place with other people. Karen urged the woman to put the footage of the incident online, and she said that everyone will beat the crap out of her for this. Again, why so aggressive? After the footage was posted online, city officials got a hold of it and began an investigation into the angry Staircase Karen. Luckily, she was found by authorities and was charged with misdemeanor battery. At number 3, Burger Karen. This one's my favorite. The story of Burger Karen, that's what I'm calling her, comes from Reddit user DripGodRob. This Karen made quite the spectacle at a local burger joint. I'm guessing because she was hangry? The Reddit user goes on to tell the story about how during a lunch or dinner rush, a Karen got very upset about the burger she received. This burger place sells the Impossible Burger, which is plant-based, and when they wrap it they put a distinct sticker on it as to not get it confused with other meat-based meals. So Karen goes ahead and buys an Impossible Burger. Then a few minutes later comes back up to the cash screaming that her burger is wrong and that she demanded a new one. In NBA All-Star fashion, she chucks the burger into the trash and demands a new one, but the manager, upon checking her order, reveals that she actually got the right order and that she was mistaken. Now, the golden rule when it comes to dealing with Karens is to never tell them that they're wrong. That's what triggers their kill switch. This Karen got pissed and she started to come behind the counter and threaten the workers, as Karens do, until an employee decided to make her another burger just to shut her up. Meanwhile, the cops are on the way. When the officers finally show up, they try to get her to leave the restaurant, but she refuses. Instead, she decides to start beating up the officers, and this leads to her arrest. This lady must have been a real grumpy goober after not getting her burger, cause man, this was a spectacle. Coming in at number 2, Chipotle Karen. Coming out of Orion Township, Michigan, a Karen and her husband, what do you call a male Karen? A Ken? I don't know. A Karen and a Ken were arrested after pulling a gun on a mother and child outside of a Chipotle. 15-year-old Michaela Green told the story about how the Karen, whose real name is Julian Wustenberg, bumped into her as she was exiting the restaurant. Michaela said excuse you to the woman, and in natural Karen fashion she clapped back. She began cussing out the teenagers, saying things like, "You're invading my personal space." Soon Michaela's mother Tequila came over to protect her daughter, and that's when things got even more heated, when the mother called her a racist. Karens don't like being called racist. Miss Wustenberg clapped back by saying that she's not a racist and that no one is racist, and then she got into her car. As they started to reverse, Michaela's mother indicated to Michaela, who was filming the whole thing, that she thought that the Karen was going to hit them with her car. In an effort to stop the car from hitting her and her daughter, Tequila hit the back of Karen's car, prompting Karen and her husband to exit the vehicle with their guns drawn and pointed at the pair. Michaela and her mother were heard in the video to be calling for the police, and that's when the Karen and Ken drove away. The two were later caught by police and charged with assault. I guess Karen was just mad that day because she didn't want to pay extra for guac. And finally at number 1, Cough Karen. This next Karenism comes out of Jacksonville, Florida, because of course it's Florida. And I can say that because I'm from Florida. The Karen in this instance is named Deborah Hunter, and she had a meltdown in a Pier 1 Imports. In a video captured by a woman named Heather Sprague, we see this Karen character getting pretty heated with the store's employees because she was unable to return a damaged item. I used to work at Winners, which is very similar to Pier 1, and I've gotta say that with stores like this, you get a lot of Karens coming your way. I've had my fair share of Karens who think that it's their right to insult you when you can't refund them for their stained white blouse that they got on discount. Anyway, this Florida Karen was seen getting increasingly belligerent until she saw that she was being filmed. Karens don't like being filmed. They only like filming you. Karen went over to the woman filming her and said, "I think I'm going to get real close to you and cough on you." Mind you, this incident took place in the midst of the pandemic, so coughing on someone was considered a Also, the woman she coughed on just so happened to be a cancer patient who was in the middle of getting treatment for a brain tumor. Karen legit coughed on someone who was already immunocompromised. After this, Karen was arrested for assault, as she rightfully should have been. In a time like this, the fact that people are using their coughs as weapons against people is absolutely disgusting. Man, Karens are just too much.
Coming in number 10, Frontier Karen.
I'm speaking to you. You have to wear your mask the whole entire flight. If you're unable to do so, you will be removed from the flight.
When COVID hit, there were a lot of people who still found a way to fly, and so as you can imagine, now flight attendants had to enforce wearing a mask while on board. Turns out that not everyone agreed with this though and still attempted to board the plane without wearing a mask. Although most of these people are going to get little sympathy from their fellow travelers, as this was very evident when it came down to Frontier Karen. In the clip you can see that a flight attendant tells this Karen that they need to wear their mask, and when they refuse, the attendant reminds the passenger that they agreed to this at the time of purchasing their ticket. Shortly after that clip began circulating, another one appeared that showed security escorting her off of the plane as passengers began clapping and shouting, "Bye Karen." Coming number 9, Delta Karen.
Your name? Tabitha 9766. Thank you, Tabitha. You may not have a job tomorrow.
A woman recently had to be kicked off of a plane to Syracuse after she complained about being seated too close to a mother and her baby. The 19-year-old mom from Rochester shared the video of the incident that shows this unruly passenger screaming at flight attendants and even threatening their jobs. The mom told the Daily Mail that this lady was the last person to get on the plane, and right away she was shouting and swearing that she even had to sit at the back of the plane. When people around her told the woman to stop swearing around children, she began to slowly descend into madness. The woman even continued to argue with the gate agent that came to remove her from the flight until she finally was told to gather her things and get off. The mom would later write in a post, "This lady thought that she was going to be rude to me and Mason. Now she has no way home today. Thank you to the lovely Delta flight attendant for not letting this woman bully us." Coming number 8, Southwest Karen.
Better to get off.
Why are we having a discussion? You're saying I didn't comply and put my mask on when you asked me to?
Although we don't get much context on this Karen, it appears that this also began over an argument about not wearing a mask while on the plane. The video starts with the woman arguing with the flight attendant before another passenger shouts that she better get off. The woman, who is now suddenly fully masked, refutes this and says, "I did put my mask on. You're saying I didn't comply and put my mask on when you asked me to. Are you seriously telling them that I didn't put my mask on when you asked me to?" And as the argument gets more attention from other passengers, the flight attendant moves toward the front of the plane and tells the woman to finally get off of the flight. The woman then stands up and aggressively begins grabbing all of her belongings as her boyfriend slowly follows behind her. I mean, that poor man. I hope he's single now. Coming number 7, Screaming for Attention.
Ma'am, I'm trying to...
This one is absolutely wild and goes to show you that some adults are simply just big babies. Sometimes during flights they do these things called through flights, which essentially just means that some passengers will deplane, but others can stay where they are until the new passengers boarding grab their seat. More often than not though, people will just get up and stretch their legs, but Karen just refused to move from her seat. A flight attendant approaches and asks her if she is going to get off because other people in her row were trying to leave, but the woman stays looking forward and still does not budge. Then as another passenger begins to get antsy, saying that she needed to use the bathroom, she tries to pass and gently brushes the shoulder of this woman frozen in her seat. At that moment, all hell breaks loose and this Karen just starts screaming. I mean, really screaming. She even tries to reach for the woman's arm as she passes by, although thankfully a flight attendant was right there and so she stepped in to put this Karen in her place. Coming number 6, Racist Karen.
kicking me off the plane because I'm white.
Yeah.
In another bizarre case of someone freaking out over being told to wear a mask, we have this lady who for whatever reason made some racist remarks as she was being asked to leave the plane. As we stare at a video of a plane full of people wearing a mask, the Karen begins shouting that no one on the plane was wearing one. She then asks if she's being kicked off of the plane because she's white, before turning back and yelling about how she doesn't like black people. It's very confusing. Coming number 5, JetBlue Karen.
Oh, because I called someone old, I get kicked off the f***ing plane. Bye! Enjoy yourself in Vegas, babies!
Back in the day before wearing masks became mandatory, the usual unruly passengers that we would see were more often than not people that maybe had a little bit too much to drink at the airport bar, or they didn't like sitting next to a crying baby. For this Karen on her way to Las Vegas, it was a little bit of both, and her trip was actually cut short after she got upset upon finding out that she was situated next to a child. According to the arrest report, she said, "I'm not sitting next to a 3-year-old, I've been drinking all day." She then proceeded to get up out of her seat and try to sit in a spot that was not hers, and as people began heckling the woman for doing this, the flight crew decided that they had enough, so she was asked to get off the plane. As she was being taken off though by a Broward Sheriff's deputy, the Karen did not go quietly. She began shouting expletives at the officer and other passengers, saying that she was being kicked off for just calling someone old. The worst part that wasn't included in the video was what happened afterwards. Again, according to the arrest report, she actually tried to get back on the plane, but when a gate agent blocked her path, the woman decided to hit her. Thankfully, she was shackled up, plopped into a wheelchair, and rolled out of the terminal into police custody. Coming number 4, Karens for Trump.
But this is what they do to us. They kick me off the plane. They call me a Karen. And they want to rule my life.
Now, not all Karens are female. This general term used for an angry and entitled customer can equally apply to men. In this case, we had a clip of a dude who had a full-on toddler meltdown upon finding out that he had to wear a mask to board the plane. At least, that is the assumption from this video, although I do want to point out that he does say in this video, "They kicked me off of a flight, they called me an effing and they want to effing rule my life," which is more of an indication to me that this man had some sort of involvement with, I don't know, let's say the riots at the Capitol on January 6th. Because if you remember, a ton of Trump supporters found out upon either trying to flee DC or upon arriving at their home terminal that they had just landed themselves on the no-fly list. Plus, the clip ends with a woman in a red coat telling him to please calm down, adding that she too was kicked off of a Delta flight earlier. Not sure how that helps, but okay. Coming number 3, Exorcist Karen. I don't know if this woman necessarily fits the Karen mold, but she certainly has lost her mind enough to warrant being on this list. While on a Michigan-bound plane, this woman had a meltdown that looks like it was straight out of the movie The Exorcist. The video shows her with a mask pulled down around her chin and mounting 2 armrests in the aisle of the plane as she repeatedly yells and bangs on the overhead luggage compartments. She doesn't really appear to have been directing this anger at anyone in particular, but nonetheless, she continues to climb on the seats and shout obscenities. Eventually, she is led off of the airplane by 2 men, but again, we have no idea what prompted this sudden outburst, and the airline refused to provide further details. Coming number 2, a ranting Karen.
Okay, and I've been
That's an
waiting.
issue. Listen, that's an issue between you and airlines. But at this point, the captain wants you off the plane.
This woman only became a Karen after the entire flight was asked to deplane due to her behavior. However, leading up to that, it appears that most of the other passengers were actually thoroughly entertained by this lady just ranting about how crappy the airline was, even chuckling when she said that this was all Trump's fault. At one point, she gets up out of her seat though to rant directly to the flight attendants, and I guess they were so triggered by all these Karens that security was called almost immediately. The woman comes back to her seat claiming that they were calling her disruptive, but upon being asked to leave, she starts blaming the staff for starting it all. Police then come on board and notify her that the captain wishes for her to get off of the plane, but they don't really have a reason other than this disruption, which really isn't that good of enough of a reason to warrant a removal. So instead, they just say that there's something wrong with the plane, order everybody to get off, and then boom, the police just meet her at the entrance. Pretty smart, pretty smart. Last but certainly not least, our number 1 spot, emergency meltdown.
Are you fucking kidding? No, I know what hell is. I've been there 6 times. I've lived. Tell the story.
After another passenger on the plane fell ill, a Spirit Airlines flight was diverted from Minneapolis to Rochester. Although once that jet landed, this Karen absolutely lost her marbles. She immediately became distressed and started hurling a stream of expletives while demanding that the staff let her off of the plane. 2 male passengers attempted to calm her down, but to no avail. She then bizarrely says in a threatening tone, "Do you know who my brothers are? They're snipers. You want to mess with the Marines?" Which makes no sense at all, but she continues. She starts saying things like, "You want to know what hell is? I've been there 6 times." Thankfully, the police arrived and escorted her off of the jet, but in reality, she's probably going to need some sort of mental evaluation because even as the police were taking her off the plane, she continued to still be belligerent.
That's a, excuse me?
Excuse me. I'm coming through.
Recently, a maskless Karen was caught on camera following another customer through a grocery store and coughing at them repeatedly. You know, during one of the most deadly pandemics in the last 100 years. It didn't take long before her face hit the local news, and as of today, it's being reported that she was fired from her job for this freakout. So as I mentioned earlier, a Karen has been identified as Janine Hoskovic from Scottsdale, Arizona. She was captured on camera following another customer throughout a supermarket as she coughed on them and claimed that she did not need to wear a mask because she wasn't sick. Well, then what was with all the coughing? Oh well, she said that her exaggerated coughing was due to her allergies, and clearly no one was buying that. The video so far has garnered the attention of the media and received over 4 million views on Twitter alone. The incident took place at a Super Saver in Lincoln, Nebraska, and in the video you can see her just dramatically coughing as she smirks and says, "Excuse me, I'm coming through," in the direction of the customer that's recording her. When the victim's daughter confronts her off camera for coughing into the open, this super spreader Karen throws her hands up and repeatedly talks down to the woman and her child, saying, "You guys are so cute," and for that level of condescension, she is quickly branded as a Karen by the woman filming. When asked by others why she doesn't have a mask on, Janine tells them, "I don't need to have one on. I'm not sick and neither are you." Now this woman filming tries to be rational, but clearly reason and logic have no place in this Karen's mind. When she points out that even if neither of them were sick, it does not give her the right to openly cough on strangers, Janine begins to just cough more dramatically as she laughs and claims further that it's her allergies that are just acting up. Janine then says, "2 years ago, before anyone started talking about COVID, you were okay with that though, going out not knowing you were sick." However, the story changes as soon as a store employee approaches her and tries to figure out what's going on here. The maskless woman then suggests that maybe she has a medical condition that is stopping her from wearing the mask, which just directly contradicts her earlier claims that she isn't sick at all. I was being polite too there as well. She doesn't even fully get out the word condition. She sort of just stumbles with the question and says, "You don't know anything about my health. Maybe I have a medical." Just full stop on the word medical.
You don't know anything about my health. Maybe I have a medical.
Okay.
She also calls them sheep, which really just tells me more about what type of content she's consuming every night to just be getting these talking points. That is 100% a Fox News mom. Unfortunately for Janine, 2 online activists quickly identified her, and from there they found her LinkedIn page that then had her listed as an employee for the German software company called SAP. Her former employer issued a statement on Twitter regarding the incident and said, "The health and safety of our employees and the communities in which we live and work are of utmost concern to us. We are taking the matter of an SAP employee incident very seriously and investigating the situation." Then shortly after that they tweeted out, "We have reviewed the incident and can confirm that the individual in question no longer works for SAP."